Welcome back. In this video, we're going to go over automating the process of creating an in-house sign document. I'm currently in the Inhouz Cloud console. We're going to test our documents using an API. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create an API. I'm going to jump into Inhouz API. I'm going to create a new API. I'm going to call that API Inhouz sign test. And this is just going to be temporary API for testing Inhouz sign. Give it a sub path of Inhouz sign test. I am going to expose this to the public, so we're not going to be doing any authentication or anything like that. And then I am going to go ahead and I think we already have something called Inhouz sign test. That is interesting. Let me take a look. Look at that. Inhouz sign test. I'm gonna just take a look at it. Do we have endpoints here? Interesting. So we already have one API for this, so I'm just gonna use this API. Perfect. Inhouz sign test. We already have an endpoint, all right? And we have a function here. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and create a new function to create a document. So I'm just gonna look at this one more time just to make sure this is exposed to the public. There we go. Save that and deploy. So we are going to deploy to the development environment. Perfect. So what we're gonna do next is that we're gonna go ahead and create a new function. I'm gonna call that function creates Inhouz sign test. All right, creates an Inhouz sign document. Perfect. For our logic, we're just going to have one workflow. I'm just going to call that workflow logic. So what we're going to do here is basically use the create an Inhouz sign document step. So when you select this function step, you're going to see a function with a bunch of options. So one thing to note is that when it comes to Inhouz sign automation, it's always based on a template. All right, it's always based on a template, so you must have a configured template. And that template is really trying to just put together the actual documents, aligning where the users have to sign, setting the roles, all that very good stuff. All right, so we're going to use one of our documents that we've created. Now, when you notice that every other thing is basically configurable, even down to the payments. So you can collect payments, you can configure what that looks like. And this is regardless of if your document currently collects payments, you can basically override that function. And you could basically configure the entire document the same way you would do it with the user interface. You can do that using this automation step. So because we're going to test this with an API, we're going to be referencing our request body parameter a lot in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and select my templates. The template we're going to use is the test proposal template. Okay, and this template just has one recipient. It doesn't have any payments, no. It's a very standard, very basic template with just one recipient, one role, which is boss, and that's about it. All right. I'm gonna grab this test proposal templates ID. I'm gonna hard code it in here. You don't have to do this. I gotta give it a name first, the variable name. I'm gonna paste this in here. So if you want it to be dynamic all the way, you can be. For the name of our document, I'm gonna be dynamic here. I'm gonna just switch to code for a second. I'm gonna say parameter dot request body dot document name. So that's going to be our document's name. All right, so I'm going to leave that alone. So here we don't really have any specific data requirements for our documents. Now, if you had some data that you wanted, that your template was consuming, you would basically pass that in here, and then it would basically create that document using this data. We're basically going to keep the send documents option to true. So if this was false, document would be created, and then you would send it perhaps using another automation. You can basically configure an email subject and an email message, but we're not going to do that here. We're just going to configure the recipient list. So we're going to switch this to code, and I'm just going to say parameter dot request body, and I'm going to call it recipient list. Okay, and then we're gonna have to map the field that matches with the first name, last name, and email. All right, so this is going to be a list, and this list is going to be a list of objects. And what this is basically just asking us to do is basically saying, hey, in our object, what field maps to first name? In this case, we're going to keep this as first name. So here I'm going to just hard code this in. Our last name field will be mapped to a field called last name. Our email is going to be mapped to a field called email. And then the role is going to be mapped to a field called role name. All right. And you can basically go ahead and provide a phone number, organization, job title. And if you wanted a custom email, you could take this as far as you want to go. You can configure the, if you had a file storage service that you would like to use for the draft, you can configure to add that here. For the attachments, you could add that here. And for final documents as generated, you could add that here as well. What we're going to do here is very simple. It's just going to have a document's name, a recipient list that just has one recipient, and that's it. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Well, one more step. I'm going to add another step, and we are going to return our documents. So this is the document that is saved to this variable document. All right. So we're going to just return. I could just type this in as document, and it does the mapping for me. And I could use code if I wanted to, but I'm just going to keep it this way. All right. I'm going to switch to the config tab, and I'm going to deploy my function. All right. Perfect. So I'm going to go back into my Inhouz API. Going to go into the Inhouz sign test. Switch to the endpoints. All right. So it seems like this is a different one. Let's go back over here. So this was the one that we were working with. So what's funny is that I've done this video multiple times. So here we are. All right. So we're going to use this one, Inhouz -sign -test. Our sub URL path is test sign. Okay, it's exposed to the public. For the endpoints for creates, we're going to go in here. We're going to change this function by clicking on it. This is the function that we just created, create in-house science test. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to select this function. All right, so now our API endpoint is now running this function. All right, and this is exposed to the public. I'm going to go ahead and save this, go into the configuration. I'm going to deploy this current version to the development environment. So now it's deployed to the dev environment, and I can just grab our URL. I have Postman. I'm going to open up Postman. Okay. This is going to be, let's just take a look. This is currently a GET request. I'm going to change this to a POST request. Okay. Save that and redeploy. Perfect. So it needs to be a POST request because we are going to be posting some data here. I'm going to change this to a POST request. I'm going to paste this in, remove some of this white space, add HTTPS. There we go. Go to the request body. I'm going to switch to JSON. So we had a couple fields. Document name. We're going to set this to create. Well, we're going to set this to test proposal dash automate one. All right. And then we're gonna, our other field was recipient list. And let me just minimize this and go back to our function. We had another field in our request body called recipient list. Just copy that, just make sure the spelling is the same. All right, and this was an array of objects. And here we're gonna have one object because our document only has one recipient. Now the field is first name for first name, right? And I'm just gonna put my name here. Last name, we map that to last name with camel case. With that's gonna be a last name. We mapped the email to the email field. And finally, because this is based on a template, we need to provide the role. And we said it was mapped to role name. So we're gonna keep that the same, and our role is boss from our template. So our template has the one role and it's named boss. All right. And in our document, we mapped first name to first name, last name, email, and role name. And we just made sure that that all matched. So I'm going to go ahead and click on send. Okay. And it says not authorized. All right. Okay. And this is because, okay, every single document requires an authorized sender. So because our API is exposed to the public, we did not have to authenticate to access that API. If we had an authentication at the API level, then it would validate against the user, the authenticated user's access. Now, because we don't have this, what we can do here now is basically go into another module called system users. All right, I have quite a few system users, and I can see that I have one system user here that is an in-house sign developer. And this just means that this user can send in-house sign documents or basically act as an in-house sign admin in a non-production environment. So that user is called Danny Joe. So what I'm going to do here is that I am going to switch back over here to my function, and I am going to add a step. All right, I'm going to go ahead and rearrange, drag that step to the top. Okay, perfect. And it's going to be a system user, a get system user API key. And we're going to say API key. And we're going to pick Danny Joe. Okay. All right, perfect. And we are going to map Danny Joe, our API key, to the X API key. We're going to save that. And we're going to deploy. Okay, perfect. Everything looks good. Now let's go ahead and retest this API endpoint. All right, so now our document is being generated. The in-house sign app is being built, and now it's been created, and now we can basically take a look. So this is our document ID. This is the app ID. So one thing that I always say is that in-house sign documents are actually e-signature apps. And this is just another proof that there is an actual app created in the background. All right. So if I go back into my in-house sign console, let's go back to in-house sign. If I switch to the development environment, I can see that our document test proposal -automate 1 has been created by Danny Joe, and this document has been sent. I can view this document, right? The recipient, which is myself, has been mapped in here correctly. I can see the email that was sent over here, which says, just, sent by Danny Joe to myself. I can view this document. It says that it was from Danny Joe from Inhouz Cloud Services, and I can go ahead and sign this document. All right. So this is, a nice video that goes over how to create in-house signed documents using an automation. All right. That's it for this video. See you in the next one.